How long have you held Apple, and how big a portion of your portfolio is it?
We've owned it continuously since 2005, and we run a pretty concentrated portfolio. It's our largest holding, representing about 9% of our portfolio.
Have you or are you thinking about lightening up either in Apple or in other technology stocks that have been so hard hit, or would you be buying more?
We are making our wish list. I think for us to make a meaningful scale back of some of our tech-related holdings, we'd have to have a pretty hard opinion on how bad this is going to be, the coronavirus, and I'm very worried about it. But the decision to sell and to get back in, your timing almost has to be perfect. But I will say, my partner's back at the shop. We are currently working on our wish list, and if things continue to get worse, we will. Hopefully we can improve our portfolio.
And you run a low, you just told us, a low turnover portfolio,
right.
25% or so, which means, what, your average holding period is 4 years?
Right.
Yeah, so
right.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. Tim, I'm curious what you make of the coronavirus. And look, Apple shares had more than doubled in just a year before this latest sell-off. So, do you think ultimately the company can kind of shake this off and get its footing back?
Yeah, I think that it's pretty easy to think that so far, coronavirus is going to create a cyclical weakness in chip supply and perhaps a cyclical weakness in demand. But that demand comes back as soon as the coast is clear from the virus, should that be the outcome. And I think I'll echo the other guest sentiment. Nobody really knows what's going to happen with coronavirus, but Apple is one of the better situated companies from a supply chain standpoint and a global demand standpoint.
Apple had an amazing quarter that they just reported back in January, right. David. Let's talk more broadly, if you wouldn't mind, and I'll go back to you, Tim, as well, on how you're handicapping the possibility of a global recession and a recession that comes here, or are we just sort of at stall speed in the economy?
I think there's maybe a bigger risk of a corporate earnings recession. The setup for this couldn't have been worse. We had this great year. Mm-hmm. S&P 500 was at 18 times forward earnings. January was a great month. We had, Apple's such a bellwether. When Apple reported seems like a long time ago, just 4 weeks ago, momentum across the board. But when you look at estimates for those companies, S&P 500 companies that are sourcing revenues outside the United States, that expectation was 6.5 or 7% revenue growth in 2020. I think that's out the window. And I think this could take a long time to reassert itself back to growth. I think this is going to take longer than what we might hope.
Tim, not to ask you something from left field, but I was thinking about it when Becky was sitting down with Warren Buffett earlier this week. They've obviously now done really well with their Apple position. Do you think they would ever look at buying the whole company?
I think it would be hard to buy the whole company just from the sheer size of it all. And it's unlikely for Apple to ever want to sell pieces of the company, because really they've been driving this ship all in the same direction, whether it be wearables, iPhones, and the services product. And I think that that's a reasonably defensible group of products. So I think it would be hard to see an acquisition. But I think the other guests have made a very, very good point that this is going to be a light earnings for a period of time, but not a secular change in the way we consume technology and the way we consume the services that these companies provide.